homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Let us now continue our study of the Bodhicharyavatara. Within the Bodhicharyavatara, yesterday we discussed the section of benefiting oneself. We praised those individuals who give rise to bodhicitta. The term Pujjala is Sanskrit, and it actually refers to a practitioner or simply a person. So we are praising those who possess bodhicitta. Their qualities are explained from 5 different perspectives. First, we discussed the excellence of benefiting oneself. Now, the second point is about the supreme benefactor. What does this mean? Among all sentient beings in the 3 realms, there is actually no one who is a greater benefactor than someone who has generated bodhicitta. In daily life, people often think, especially some monastics or practitioners, that whichever layperson or benefactor regularly makes offerings to them is their true benefactor. This is a common view, but in reality, the true great benefactor is the benefactor of all sentient beings. This refers to bodhisattvas, those who have generated bodhicitta. Other than bodhisattvas, the recipients of worldly benefactors are limited, confined to just a few people. For example, a benefactor may have faith in a particular monastic or great master and regularly make offerings to them, but pay no attention to others at all. There are such cases that some are indifferent to other recipients. When we speak of bodhisattvas here, it means those who have generated bodhicitta are truly the refuge for all beings. This is the main point being explained here, and the verse says, people extol as doing something good those who provide a few with regular meals, donating scornfully for a short time plain food that satisfies for half a day. What need to speak of those who always give to beings of untold number? For a long time, the sublime happiness of the Sugatas, fulfilling every one of their desires. Here, several aspects are compared to illustrate this point. A great being who has generated bodhicitta is truly the support and refuge for all sentient beings. A simple example is given here to clarify this principle, so to help us understand the reasoning. For instance, if someone occasionally prepares some plain food and with a dismissive attitude offers it to a small number of beings, allowing them to be full for half a day so that their hunger is relieved for a short time, people will still regard this person as remarkable. They will say, look, for so many days, this person has regularly made offerings to so many beings. Everyone speaks highly of this as a great act of kindness. But in Mahayana Buddhism, those who have generated bodhicitta are not limited by time. They give constantly. So their giving is not bound by time. Their generosity is ongoing. They continually grant unsurpassed happiness to countless sentient beings, and whatever wishes sentient beings have, they strive to fulfill them all. Such a spirit and such actions are truly rare and precious in this world. Therefore, if we are to praise anyone, it should be these beings. As we just discussed, these points can be compared from several perspectives. For example, from the perspective of time, some people only give occasionally, not over a long period. In their entire lives, this action of giving might be performed over 20 years or just a few months, but this period is neither eternal nor does it span lifetimes. So within such a short time, the money, food, or small items that are given are not necessarily things that truly bring happiness. It's just their way of utilizing their resources. From the perspective of what is given, it is not particularly noble. Furthermore, if we look at the act of giving itself, some wealthy people or great benefactors, even though they give things to others, they may not always do so with genuine respect and care. Sometimes there is a sense of disdain or contempt, or they may give with a dismissive attitude, not very kindly. If you need it, come here. I'll give you a little. Sometimes when some individuals encounter beggars, they might scold them while giving just a few coins. But the generosity of a bodhisattva is not like this. As described in the introduction to the Middle Way, when they hear the sound of someone begging outside, they feel as joyful as an arhat who has attained the bliss of meditative absorption. If they feel such joy in their hearts, then when they meet beggars or those in need, they are truly delighted to give and consider that such a chance is hard to come by. So there is a big difference in their attitudes, and the recipients are only a small number of beings, not all sentient beings everywhere. For example, in our world today, some business owners provide lunch for all their employees in their factories or companies. They make sure everyone gets lunch every day. If that's the case, people will say, look, there are hundreds of people here, and he provides free meals every day. People will think this person is very kind, since this doesn't happen very often. Look how well he treats his employees. Many people will praise him for this, but if we analyze this with wisdom from the perspective of recipients, it's not all sentient beings. It's just a few hundred, a few thousand, or a few dozen beings. And in terms of time, it does not last for countless lifetimes. It is only a few decades in this one lifetime. And from the perspective of what is given, it is just ordinary food. In this way, the effect of this act can solve their hunger for half a day. For example, if you provide someone with lunch every day, it only solves their needs for half a day. These people are recognized and praised in society, and people acknowledge their kindness. But if we compare this to a bodhisattva, the difference is clear. First, a bodhisattva's generosity is constant and enduring. This is not just for a year or two, or even a few lifetimes, as we see in the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni, even life after life, even if reborn as an animal. The altruistic intention from previous lives is never abandoned. In this life, they benefit sentient beings, and in the next life, they still do so. This continues life after life, all the way until Buddhahood is attained. They constantly benefit sentient beings without interruption. Of course, the verses may not state this explicitly, but it does imply the attitude and conduct of a bodhisattva. We can see that in the world, people sometimes give with a sense of contempt or superiority. But when a bodhisattva gives to sentient beings, their attitude is well known to all. A bodhisattva gives with great respect, no matter what is offered. Even if it means offering their own head or right hand, they are willing to do so as long as it fulfills the wishes of sentient beings. They are ready to act in any way necessary to benefit others. From the perspective of recipients, ordinary people give only to a very limited number of people. But when we generate unsurpassed bodhicitta, the recipients are limitless sentient beings. This includes not just one country or one planet, but all humans and non-humans, all beings beyond just humanity. They are all treated with the same intention. And what is given is not just ordinary defiled material things, not just defiled food or clothing, which can only temporarily solve daily needs. If we teach the Dharma and help beings give rise to bodhicitta, what is given is temporary happiness in the human and God realms, and ultimately the lasting and supreme bliss, that is the unsurpassed state of bodhisattvas and Buddhas. As described in the Mahayana Sutras, Buddhahood is endowed with immeasurable, inconceivable qualities. So what is given is not just ordinary food or clothing or a few things, which, as mentioned earlier, only satisfies a few people. It is only for a limited number of people. For example, if you want food, you get food every day. But if you want clothing, it may not be provided. If you ask for more clothes or other things, they may not provide them. They may say, I've already provided for you. Look, I give you lunch every day. If you ask for more, they may say you are asking too much and ask you to leave. They might even tell you not to stay any longer. But a bodhisattva is not like this. As long as sentient beings have needs, a bodhisattva strives to fulfill them all. They treat all sentient beings with equal respect. We can see this clearly in the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. I hope that as we study the Bodhicharyavatara this time, we should follow this tradition of Patru Rinpoche. Some of you have studied it before. Last year we spent half a year studying this biography, so many of you should remember every story. But for those who have not studied before, I hope you can read one story a day or a few stories over several days and finish reading them all within a year, if you truly understand the motivation and actions of Buddha Shakyamuni in generating bodhicitta life after life. You will realize how humble our own bodhicitta is. At the same time, you will also gain new inspiration. Since I am a Buddhist and aspire to generate Mahayana bodhicitta from now on, I should not treat any sentient beings carelessly. I must learn from Buddha Shakyamuni. This is the feeling we should have. Back to the topic of fulfilling the wishes of all beings, when we compare the worldly mindset to Buddhist spirit, we find they are not quite the same. When we say Buddhism is not separate from worldly dharmas, it does not mean that all worldly ways are promoted in the Dharma. Otherwise, there would be no difference, and Dharma would not be a transcendent path. We should know that some worldly ideas are completely different from those in Buddhism. For example, in our world, I think many people, including those in Theravada Buddhism, find it extremely difficult to fulfill the wishes of all sentient beings. But because the mind of a bodhisattva is so vast, they are able to bring happiness to all sentient beings. In this regard, they devote themselves wholeheartedly. Not only do they make aspirations in their hearts, but also act in practice. Whether in this life or in future lives, they always strive to satisfy and liberate sentient beings, no matter the circumstances. This is their sole intention. For all of us here, since we have generated bodhicitta, of course, when we discuss the second chapter in a few days, we will talk about bodhicitta in even more detail. Everyone must generate bodhicitta. This year, we should renew our bodhicitta. When His Holiness was alive, every year, usually in the 6th month of the Tibetan calendar, everyone was encouraged to take the bodhisattva vow and generate bodhicitta together. So I think this year we should also hold a bodhisattva precept ceremony. But before generating bodhicitta, everyone should know its benefits. Meanwhile, we should also understand, from a logical perspective, the difference between the mindset of virtuous individuals and the bodhicitta mind. For example, some progressive individuals or philanthropists and other charitable people in the world, from the perspective of ordinary people, these individuals are truly remarkable. Many people admire them from the bottom of their hearts, and there are indeed such noble people in the world. However, their motivation is different from the bodhicitta described in Mahayana Buddhism. So, regarding worldly kindness and bodhicitta, we should all clearly understand their differences. The main distinction between Mahayana and Hinayana is in the motivation. It is not about what someone wears or how they dress or appear. It is not about these external factors. The distinction is made based on the vastness of one's mind. Moreover, such a person has made vows before the 3 jewels. A person like this is truly a good person. For example, if someone says, "I will never kill in this life," everyone feels a sense of safety around them. If someone has vowed never to kill, we naturally trust them, at least knowing they would never harm us. If many people in the world vowed from now on to wholeheartedly help sentient beings and made this vow before the 3 jewels, then, no matter what happens in the future, people would trust them. Such trust is well-deserved. In this world, the more people who generate Mahayana bodhicitta, the more illnesses, disasters, and confusion in the world will gradually disappear, benefiting all of humanity. I believe that truly generating bodhicitta has an immeasurable impact on the world. I just gave a brief explanation of this verse. Now, let's move on to the commentary. For instance, someone makes offerings, but the recipients are only a small number of beings, just a few hundred or a few dozen people, and the giving only happens once a year or once a month, and what is given is just ordinary food, and the attitude is dismissive and lacking respect, and the benefit is only to relieve hunger for half a day. All that is accomplished is just this much. Even such actions are called good deeds and are respected by many. Everyone says, "This person is truly remarkable. Look how much he has given. He has already given so much." In the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, for example, King Prasenajit and Anathapindika were benefactors who regularly made offerings to the monastic community. Their grand offering to the Sangha is very well known in Buddhist history. When the Buddha was alive, every day in front of the Buddha and his followers, large amounts of food were offered. Many of these stories are found in the Vinaya Sutra, from the perspective of those who have generated bodhicitta. For example, if there is a business owner who invites 1,000 monks every year and makes offerings for 100 days each year, in some places like Thailand or Singapore, this is a common occurrence. People say, "This great benefactor is truly like an elder bodhisattva. It's amazing. Look how many monastics he has invited and supported. He has made so many offerings," and so on. But sometimes these people may not always act with great respect. They may think, Look at the great merit I have accumulated this time. They feel they are truly remarkable. Or a wealthy person may regularly make offerings to beggars. In Nepal, for example, some wealthy people make offerings on the 15th or 30th of each month. They give to others on these days, and on these occasions many beggars gather together. When these benefactors make offerings, people say, this person is truly remarkable. Look, every month he gives so much to others. Everyone praises them for this, but compared to those who generate bodhicitta, the merit is completely different. If even these actions are praiseworthy, how much more so when the recipients are limitless sentient beings and the span of giving is continuous and unending? From now until Buddhahood is attained, the giving continues. And what is given is the unsurpassed happiness of the Sugatas. It is not just a meal for a day. Sometimes, if a beggar is not used to good food, if you give them a good meal, they might even get sick. Sometimes, without sufficient good fortune, they may find it hard to enjoy good things. Once in a cafeteria, I saw a beggar who looked very pitiful. A Dharma friend and I gave him a good meal. He ate some, but quickly vomited it. Due to a lack of merit, even enjoying a good meal can be difficult. Anyway, the happiness we can give is only temporary. But if we generate bodhicitta, what can we bring to sentient beings? It is the unsurpassed state of Buddhahood, which everyone in the world aspires to be free from samsara and attain perfect Buddhahood. The benefit is to fulfill all wishes. It is not for a day or two. It is not just for one or two people. We can see this in the biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. If someone asked for wealth, he gave it. If they asked for a house, he gave it. If they asked for his head, eyes, brain, or limbs, he gave everything without reservation. In 1998, at our Buddhist Academy, we performed some Buddhist dances. At that time, we performed the story of Prince Vesantara from the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. In that story, everything that worldly people desire is given away. Some in the audience, who were not Buddhists or were skeptical, were deeply moved after seeing this spirit. It seemed as if no one else in the world had such compassion. After watching the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni, some people developed unshakable faith in the Buddha's supreme spirit and later became true Buddhists themselves. There are such cases. Sometimes when we look at people in the world, they also often say we should practice virtuous deeds. This is true both abroad and in our own country. People also say that good people should be treated kindly, while those who are unkind should be treated accordingly. When we were students, we learned stories like Mr. Dongo and the Wolf, and stories such as The Farmer and the Snake. Although these stories come from ancient times, they are told from the perspective of human kindness and compassion. But what do these stories teach us? They teach that when others are kind to us, we should be kind in return. But if some beings are especially malicious or harmful, we should try to keep our distance and not get too close. If we do get close, we may end up suffering ourselves. So, according to this view, we should treat some beings well, and others we should not treat so kindly. That is how it is explained. But in Mahayana Buddhism, it is not like this. All living beings, all sentient beings in the world, of course, if you are kind to me, I should be kind to you. But even if someone is not kind to me, I cannot repay harm with harm. Instead, I should respond with compassion. Such a spirit and such a culture can be said to be truly unique among all traditions in the world today. It is truly rare to be found elsewhere. We often say someone is very kind, but even this kindness has its limitations. For example, someone may be very kind to those close to them, or to people from their own country, or to people of the same ethnicity, or even to all humans. They may be considered outstanding. But when it comes to beings other than humans, such as animals, it is hard to say. Without bodhicitta, it is difficult to extend kindness to all living beings. If we generate bodhicitta, our concern extends beyond humanity to all sentient beings, and its duration is not just for a day or two. In the world, we often say, doing a good deed once is not difficult, but being a good person for a lifetime is hard. But the spirit of a bodhisattva is not just to be a good person for one lifetime, but to be a good person and a good being for lifetime after lifetime. Even if you are reborn as a yak, when the seed of bodhicitta matures, you will become a good yak, one that does not harm others. This can also be seen in the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. So after hearing this teaching, on one hand, as ordinary beings, we may have strong habitual tendencies from past lives, and it may be difficult to change all our faults at once. To completely transform ourselves may not be easy. But now we should make a firm vow that in all future lives, even if we are reborn as animals, we will still have compassion for one another. For example, among the ducks we raise, some ducks never harm other beings. They seem to be no different from bodhisattvas, but some are very aggressive and harsh. Among humans, it is the same. Some people seem very kind and always smiling, and being around them feels very pleasant. But not everyone is like this. Some truly are not. So after studying the Bodhicharyavatara, the most important thing is to give rise to bodhicitta in our own mind stream. We must generate this bodhicitta. Back to the commentary. In terms of conduct, one should give with the utmost respect. One should always give to others with great respect. Of course, when we are in a good environment, it is easy for everyone. But when facing those who are not kind to us or those who often criticize us, what should we do? As practitioners with bodhicitta, we should still respond with loving kindness and compassion. This is very important. As mentioned earlier, we observe the differences between ordinary good people and those with bodhicitta in terms of recipients, time, conduct, and the happiness that is given. In big cities, we often see that a business owner is very successful, and people say it is because he treats his employees well, and also because he is very smart and capable. But in reality, those who truly generate bodhicitta have many qualities that set them apart from ordinary good people. This is not just because we study Mahayana Buddhism and therefore praise those who generate bodhicitta. If we truly reflect on each point we just mentioned, we see that there are many good people in the world, but how many have a heart like that of bodhicitta? You can see how rare it is. In the verse, the word constant is used. The word constant is explained in some commentaries as, even if space and sentient beings reach their end, this bodhicitta does not cease. This is the meaning of constant. In fact, sentient beings in space have no end, but even if they did, the bodhisattva's generosity would never cease. As mentioned, a bodhisattva constantly brings happiness to others, and this conduct has no end. This is an explanation that combines conduct and generosity. Even if space had an end, the acts of giving and respect for sentient beings would never cease. This is an explanation that combines conduct and generosity. Master Prajnacaramati explains it in terms of the difference in time. This is the difference in terms of time. Ordinary good people have limited and occasional acts of kindness, but a bodhisattva's kindness is everlasting from the perspective of time. According to Master Kalyanadeva, this is explained in terms of what is given. I checked the commentary by Kalyanadeva from India, and he also explains the aspect of time at the beginning. It is in what is given. Ordinary people usually give simple food and drink, or just some ordinary food. But here, the giving is constant, and the happiness given is supreme and everlasting. The difference in what is given is that it is everlasting. This means the unsurpassed happiness of Buddhahood. What is given by a bodhisattva is completely different from what is given by ordinary people. Literally, there is no element of time in this passage. In fact, constant means to bring happiness to sentient beings forever. This is how the difference in what is given can be explained. Anyway, the word constant is not stated very explicitly here. So, this concludes the second point. Now we move on to the third point. 3. The supreme field of merit. A bodhisattva who has generated bodhicitta is truly a supreme field of merit. Why is this so? If we make offerings, show respect, and have faith in them, the merit is immense. Conversely, if we give rise to anger or slander them, or insult or harm them, the fault is also very great. Therefore, a bodhisattva is a supreme object of offering, or a very powerful object of karma. It can be called a powerful object, but here the main point is the supreme field of merit. This is the explanation of the outline here. Someone who rouses a malicious thought towards such a patron, offspring of the victors, will dwell in hell as many eons as the count of their bad thoughts, the sage has said. But the results of someone feeling faith proliferate in far greater abundance. This means that, as we just discussed, a bodhisattva who has generated bodhicitta becomes the great benefactor of all sentient beings. Sometimes some people may say, I am the benefactor of that Rinpoche. For example, a lady might say, I am Miss Yang, and I am the great benefactor of such and such Rinpoche. And some might say, I am a great benefactor. Of course, there is no Ms. Yang or the great boss here. I just use these as examples. So they believe they are the great benefactors. But for someone who generates bodhicitta, even if they have no money at all, I believe that person is the true great benefactor. Why? Because their aspiration can bring unsurpassed happiness to countless sentient beings. So with this power of generosity in their heart, their aspirations will gradually be fulfilled. As we have already discussed, those who have generated bodhicitta should be considered great benefactors. In front of such great benefactors or great children of the Buddha, if someone has heavy negative karma or has not subdued their afflictions and gives rise to a negative mind toward them, the Buddha said in some sutras that such a person will definitely fall into the hell realms and the time spent in hell will be very long. What kind of negative mind is this? For example, if someone has generated bodhicitta and I harbor negative thoughts or sometimes even want to beat them or deliberately slander them for no reason. Of course, if we harm them with body, speech and mind, the fault is very great. But some people may not say or do anything, but simply have the wish to harm or even kill them in their mind. Just giving rise to such a thought, even for a moment, the duration of this negative thought makes a difference. If you give rise to it for just an instant, according to the Abhidharmakosha, there are 64 or 65 instants in a finger snap. If I give rise to a negative thought for just one instant, here it means the shortest instant of time, but not the instant of completion of an action, even in such a brief moment. If I give rise to a negative thought, I will remain in the hell realms for an entire eon. For example, if I have a negative thought for a finger snap, and there are 64 small instants in that finger snap, each of those instants I will experience suffering in the Avicii hell and other hells for 64 great eons. Depending on the severity of the negative karma, one will experience different sufferings in the hell realms. Will this really happen? Yes, it will. Why? Because they are an extremely potent field. It is the same in the world. If someone tries to harm a president or head of state, who is the protector of the whole nation, if someone tries to harm or attack them, they will definitely be punished by law. If someone attacks me, there may not be any legal consequences, but if I am a president and someone attacks me, they will definitely be punished by law. In the same way, because they are a very powerful object, if we give rise to a negative mind toward them, we will experience suffering for a very long time, for many eons. The Abhidharmakosha says that they are small, medium, and great eons. Here it refers to a great eon during which one suffers in the hell realms. After hearing this, some Dharma friends may feel quite afraid. You see, among so many people around us, many have generated bodhicitta. Are these bodhisattvas with absolute bodhicitta or relative bodhicitta? This is explained very clearly in the Compendium of Training. It quotes many scriptural sources and says that the object is someone in whose mind stream relative bodhicitta has arisen. So, among those present here and all the Dharma friends participating in the Buddhist Study Association, perhaps more than 70 or 80% will first understand the benefits of bodhicitta and later give rise to it. Some people may feel afraid. Then what should I do in the future? If I often give rise to negative thoughts or wrong views toward them, then I may never be able to escape from the hell realms. Some people may worry about this. Indeed, this is the profound cause and effect taught by the Buddha. No one in the world can decide or judge. No one can say for sure that you will not fall into the hell realms. But after a real understanding of the gravity of such negative karma, in this way we will be more careful ourselves. For example, a wise person knows that if they steal gold, they will suffer in prison for many years. So They won't dare to steal gold in the future. So once we understand the consequences, we will naturally be more careful in our actions. On the other hand, as ordinary beings, we do have very heavy karma. Buddha Shakyamuni also said in the teaching on the non-arising of all dharmas that karmic obscurations mainly refer to slandering bodhisattvas. Slandering bodhisattvas is indeed a very heavy karmic obscuration. Among Buddhists, we often hear people say, "Lama, my karma is very heavy, my karmic obscurations are deep." Indeed, if you slander others, this is the case. The sutras make it very clear that such karma is extremely heavy, so we should be very mindful and cautious. We cannot tell just by appearances whether one is a bodhisattva or not. No matter how poorly someone dresses, or how unattractive they look, or even if their behavior seems a bit odd, it is very possible that deep inside they have already generated relative bodhicitta, and their bodhicitta has never encountered any obstacles. They have never lost it. They truly have bodhicitta in their mind stream. So it is best not to give rise to negative thoughts toward them. Even if you sometimes do, try not to let it last overnight. Before the night is over, confess and talk it out with each other. If that is really not possible, as I have suggested before, recite the 100-syllable mantra 21 times every day. Generally, many of the faults of breaking vows or the bodhisattva vow can be purified in this way. So, in the morning, I used to get up at 5:55, but found that I didn't have enough time. Now I get up at 5:30 instead. Basically, I recite the 100-syllable mantra, make some prostrations, wash my face, and drink a little water. There is always a little time for these things. If you get up at 5:55, you may feel it's a little rushed. Previously, you may have not practiced in this way. At first, it felt like there was never enough time, so I hope everyone understands that as ordinary beings, we have accumulated a lot of negative karma since beginningless time, especially in daily life, among Dharma friends, or when seeing sentient beings. Sometimes we just can't give rise to faith, but instead have negative thoughts. Sometimes negative thoughts arise for no reason at all. This is just our own karma manifesting. Others have done nothing wrong to us, but when we see them, we just can't stand it. Not long ago, I also met a person like this. Whenever he saw me, he would get very angry. I don't even know why, since I never say anything harsh to him, never said anything bad, but he would still get angry when he saw me. This kind of situation definitely exists. It is probably due to one's own karma. No matter what, when negative karma is manifesting, this can happen. So we should always confess and purify ourselves, especially the fault of giving rise to negative thoughts or wrong views toward the Vajra Master. The Kala Chakra Tantra also teaches the same thing. When we studied the 50 stanzas on following a teacher, some commentaries also quoted relevant scriptural sources. It is said that for every instant of negative thought toward the teacher, one will suffer in the lower realms for that many eons. There are also other very powerful objects of karma. If you give rise to negative thoughts toward them, there will be consequences. So, whenever negative thoughts arise in our mind stream, we must confess and purify them. Some people may think, no matter how much I confess, it seems difficult to purify. Even those who have generated bodhicitta may still have such negative thoughts from time to time. If this goes on for too long, you might think it's hopeless. But next, Shantideva also explains that if we give rise to negative thoughts, it is indeed very heavy karma. But if we give rise to faith and pure joy toward them, the merit will completely surpass the negativity. So we can find some comfort in this. Here the verse says, if one gives rise to pure faith, if, as we discussed, in front of such a bodhisattva, we give rise to pure faith and a pure mind, thinking they are truly good people, or if we have faith in their every word and action. Sometimes we develop faith in them, thinking, yes, sometimes they make mistakes, but not for long. So most of the time we have faith and joy toward them. If we think this person is truly remarkable, then the merit will completely surpass any negativity. For example, if I have a negative thought for an instant, I have created the cause to remain in hell for a long time. But if after a while I realize I was angry and it was not good, oh, I was just angry earlier, that wasn't right, and most of the day I have a good impression and pure mind toward them, then the moments of pure mind will outweigh the negativity. For every instant, for example, if I have a minute of negative thought and then a minute of positive thought and faith, the merit of faith will completely surpass the fault of negativity, and this merit surpasses the negativity by millions of times. If we understand the law of karma, that good brings good results and bad brings bad results, we will see that there is great fault and also great merit. If we do not understand the faults, we will keep making the same mistakes. If we do not understand the merit, we will never experience the joy and comfort that comes from it. So in daily life, when facing potent field, especially those who have generated bodhicitta, we should always act properly in all our conduct. This is extremely important. The commentary says the following: if any being gives rise to a negative mind towards such a generous bodhisattva, then for however many instants of negativity arise, they will remain in hell for that many eons. So, giving rise to negative thoughts is extremely unwholesome. We should always confess and restrain our negative thoughts. Harboring feelings of anger or jealousy toward others, especially the intention to harm them, is completely unreasonable and never justified. Here, the object being discussed is someone who has generated relative bodhicitta. The Compendium of Training also cites many scriptural sources on this point. Some of these sources say that the object is not only someone who has generated relative bodhicitta, but even those who have not yet done so. If they possess the Mahayana disposition, they are also worthy of our protection. Even if they are reborn as animals, they still deserve our care and respect. Of course, before we attain clairvoyance, we may not know which yaks, for example, have the Mahayana disposition. In big cities, there are so many people who have not taken refuge, crowds everywhere like an anthill. When we see each person on the surface, it may seem that everyone is just busy pursuing money, wealth, and status. They are always busy with these things, so it's hard to tell. But among them, there are certainly many with the Mahayana disposition. So we should not give rise to negative thoughts toward them, otherwise the fault would be very great. Even if someone has not truly become a child of the Mahayana, if they have the Mahayana disposition, they are still worthy of our respect and honor. That is the meaning here. The Sutra on the Calm and Magical Absorption says, Manjushri, if a bodhisattva gives rise to anger or contempt toward another bodhisattva, then for as many eons as the duration of that thought, this bodhisattva will remain in hell, wearing armor. This means that if someone who has generated relative bodhicitta gives rise to anger toward another person with relative bodhicitta, then, as mentioned before, for however many instants of anger arise, this person will remain in hell for that many eons. Then, when this person again gives rise to bodhicitta, again this person needs to put on the armor of diligence. Later in this sutra, it uses the analogy of a vajra jewel to explain further. For example, a vajra jewel, no other metal can destroy it, only a vajra jewel can destroy itself. In the same way, for someone who has generated relative bodhicitta, no other condition can cause them to fall into the lower realms. But if they give rise to anger or slander towards someone with bodhicitta, they will fall into the lower realms. Generally speaking, even if you commit the 5 crimes with immediate retribution or other negative karma, as long as you have bodhicitta in your mind stream, you may not fall. But if you have bodhicitta and then give rise to anger toward another bodhisattva, and do not properly confess, you may very well fall into the lower realms. We should be mindful of this. This is the meaning in the sutras. On the other hand, if any being gives rise to pure faith in a bodhisattva with bodhicitta, if I give rise to a pure mind and joy toward them and feel that they are truly remarkable and develop a pure mind toward them, then the result will far surpass the result of negative thoughts. This is also very important for us. Sometimes among Vajradharma friends, we may argue, and during arguments, we may have negative thoughts toward each other. We may feel uncomfortable for a whole day, but in a month, this may only happen once or twice. Of course, people have different personalities. Some people, when upset, take a long time to recover and remain unhappy for a long time. Some may get very angry for a moment, but soon feel fine again. they are happy again, and others also feel quite relieved. Getting angry is not a big deal for them. They won't hold it for a long time. My father and mother were like this. Our father, well, not our father, my own father would often get angry, but soon it would pass. But my mother was just the opposite. She rarely got angry, but when she did, she wouldn't speak for 2 or 3 days. So as children, we were especially afraid of our mother getting angry. We thought it was fine if our father got angry because he would soon be fine. He would be unhappy for a while, but then be fine again. In a single day, it was like spring weather, changing back and forth, but nothing serious. But with our mother, we really couldn't let her get angry. If she did, the whole family would feel the tension for days. It felt like there was no good atmosphere at home. We felt really uncomfortable. For those of us who have generated bodhicitta, some may still give rise to anger toward others. It does happen. But it is best to shorten the duration of negative thoughts as much as possible. We should remind ourselves that there is nothing we can't get over. Even if the other person did something wrong, we may not get over it right away, but try not to let it last too long. We should talk to each other and greet each other. This is very necessary. In many situations outside, it is not like this. If someone upsets them once, they may hold on to it forever. They keep it in their heart for a long time, never letting it go. But for us, as Mahayana Bodhisattvas, this is not the right spirit. It is actually contrary to the teachings. I just forgot to mention a scriptural source. The sutra on entering the definite and indefinite seals says, Manjushri, if the eyes of all sentient beings in the 10 directions were gouged out. This is a hypothetical example. It could never really happen. No one could gouge out the eyes of all beings in the world. There are many such hypothetical examples here. If a virtuous man or woman with compassion restored the sight of all those beings, if everyone's sight was restored, would the merit be great? Of course, it would be immense. Not to mention all beings. Even if we invite 1 or 2 doctors to perform cataract surgery, we feel we have created a lot of merit, and others will also praise, you are truly a great bodhisattva. Look, 30 people have regained their sight. But the merit of generating bodhicitta, when compared to this, is still quite different. Manjushri, if there are others, here it is explained like this. If there are other virtuous men and women who look with faith and confidence at a Mahayana bodhisattva, the merit generated surpasses the previous example by countless times. You see, if someone generates bodhicitta and we look at them with faith or with a pure and sincere gaze, looking at this bodhisattva with a pure mind, then the merit generated far exceeds the previous example. So truly taking a Mahayana practitioner as your field of merit, whether accumulating merit or giving rise to faith, the merit is truly immense. Venerable Longchenpa, in Finding Resting in the Nature of Mind, also quotes a story where even giving rise to desire toward a bodhisattva later resulted in rebirth in the heaven of the 33, and so on. There are such stories. In daily life, among ordinary people, we do not know who is truly a bodhisattva and who is not. This is extremely difficult to discern. As stated in the Avatamsaka Sutra, when Sudhana sought out spiritual friends, he encountered butchers and others whose conduct did not seem in accordance with the Dharma. So, when we see people whose conduct is not in accord with the Dharma, we may think, this can't be a bodhisattva. It doesn't matter if we insult or criticize them. This is very unreasonable. In the Lotus Sutra, when Avalokiteshvara manifests in 33 different forms, sometimes Avalokiteshvara appears as a ghost king or a general and so on. There are all kinds of manifestations. So the manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the world may appear as animals, as poor people, as wealthy people, or as disabled people. There are all kinds of appearances. Even when we see someone on the street who has lost all their arms and legs, when we see them, we should also treat them as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. As it says in the Questions of Kashyapa Sutra, we should view all sentient beings as Buddhas, as our own teacher. With this view, we will not create negative karma. And in the Bodhicharyavatara, this is emphasized everywhere. When we look at sentient beings, even our gaze should be gentle and loving. We should look at others with such loving kindness. So I think unless there is a special reason or special intention when we look at sentient beings in daily life, we should always have a loving attitude and a kind expression. In this way, we will not create negative karma. if we always say, oh, this is my guru, this is a tulku, this must be a Buddha or Bodhisattva, I must be very respectful, and bow again and again, but treat other beings with indifference and disdain. Some people are like this, toward their own teacher or those with status or wealth. They are always respectful, even their tone on the phone is completely different. They have a respectful way of answering calls for important people, a different way for average people, and when someone lower calls, they just say, okay, goodbye, or don't even say goodbye. Sometimes they just say, okay, okay, and hang up right away. So some people really are like this. In our conduct, if we act like some people did in the past, I'm not saying anyone in particular, but some people think I am talking about them and feel embarrassed. So we must be mindful in our conduct and treat all sentient beings with equal respect. This is extremely important. There are more examples in this scripture. For example, if all sentient beings in the world were imprisoned and then all were released and given the status of a universal monarch, the merit would be immense. But if you give rise to faith in a bodhisattva and look at them with kindness, the merit far surpasses even that. Many such merits are described. So, comparing these two, sometimes we may worry that in front of many Dharma friends who have generated bodhicitta, we may lose our temper, have wrong views or negative thoughts. This does happen. Even if they are not Dharma friends at you, when we see other sentient beings, it is really hard to tell who is not a bodhisattva. Some people think, yes, these people are definitely not bodhisattvas. They have never generated bodhicitta. They haven't even taken refuge. Some people think this way, but it's not necessarily true. Perhaps in a previous life, they already took refuge and generated Mahayana bodhicitta, but it has not yet matured in this life. But this person is already a Mahayana bodhisattva. Why? From the Hinayana perspective, when a person dies, their vows are naturally lost, but for the bodhisattva vow, it is not like that. If I generate bodhicitta in this life and my bodhicitta is never destroyed, then even if I am reborn as a non-Buddhist in my next life, the bodhisattva vow still remains in my mind stream. If I am reborn as a yak in my next life, the bodhisattva vow is still present in my mind stream. So, whether it is an animal or any sentient being, we should view them as bodhisattvas. Some of us may have eaten a lot of seafood, eaten fish or other sentient beings, but perhaps these beings generated bodhicitta in their past lives. If it really was a being who had generated bodhicitta, then you would have swallowed a bodhisattva. How great would that fault be? Really think about it. Even just having a negative thought toward a bodhisattva is a huge fault. So what about actually swallowing a being who has truly generated bodhicitta? This is not a joke. You really should think about it. Some people, before becoming vegetarian, ate many sentient beings. Can you be sure there were no bodhisattvas among them? From the perspective of Buddhist logic, I would not dare to say for sure. If someone says, look, there are so many snails in this bowl, and claims among these snails there could never be any bodhisattva with aspirational or engaged bodhicitta. There could never be such a being among them. But I cannot provide any scriptural or logical proof for that. If that's the case, then we have truly created a lot of negative karma. From now on, we should start anew. How do we start anew? From now on, whenever we look at any sentient being first, we should not harm them and do our best not to give rise to negative thoughts. With such a vow, in this and all future lives, our conduct will always be proper and in accordance with the Dharma. Now let's move on to the fourth point. 4. Not being harmed by suffering. Those who have generated bodhicitta are not harmed by suffering. With bodhisattvas, even grave events don't bring misdeeds. Good naturally increases. Such a person, even when facing difficulties in their practice, may encounter disasters, illness and suffering, as well as setbacks and other obstacles. But for someone who has generated bodhicitta, even when facing difficulties in their practice or when in adverse circumstances, They are not like ordinary people. Ordinary people, when faced with obstacles, may lose their virtuous motivation. But for bodhisattvas, their virtuous motivation only grows stronger and never diminishes, because their great compassion and enthusiasm for virtue are extremely strong. Even when they encounter great difficulties and obstacles, they are not affected. We can see this in the extensive biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. Throughout his many lifetimes, even when facing life-threatening situations, he never lost his bodhicitta. This is also true for Milarepa and Master Shuyun. They too encountered obstacles in their practice and experienced suffering, but these difficulties actually became conditions for their practice and even became favorable circumstances for their progress. So throughout history, many great masters, including His Holiness Rinpoche, back then when the times get really bad, even in such circumstances, he never changed his virtuous motivation. So for these masters, the virtue in their mind stream only increases more and more. All bodhisattvas, though they experience great suffering and hardship, they will never give rise to anger or other negative thoughts. Instead, through these external conditions, their virtue will naturally increase. This is also found in the sayings of the wise. A person with true wisdom, even when facing decline, will never engage in unwholesome conduct. Their actions always remain noble and virtuous. As it says in the verse summary of the perfection of wisdom, though they endure much unbearable harm, the mind of the noble one does not change. Even when facing great difficulties and obstacles, in such circumstances, their mind is never changed. Because their patience is extremely stable, they practice supreme bodhi with great faith and understanding. Practice supreme bodhi with great faith and understanding means that because their patience becomes more and more stable and strong, and as a result, they develop great faith and understanding. Here, faith and understanding refers to what we often call interest and confidence. That is what is meant here. Bodhisattvas with great faith will always practice the path of Bodhi and will not be turned away by obstacles. This faith and understanding is also discussed in the ornament of clear realization, where the faith, dedication, and rejoicing of bodhisattvas on the path are explained. These are the three main functions. What does this mean? It means we must have faith and understanding in virtue. Faith and understanding means interest. Having a joyful interest in virtue is called faith and understanding. If virtue has not yet arisen in our mind stream, we need faith and understanding to give rise to it. If it has arisen, we need dedication to prevent it from being destroyed. And to make sure the virtuous roots continue to increase, we need rejoicing. These are the three fundamental points we will study in the ornament of clear realization. So for such bodhisattvas, as we just mentioned, their faith will never diminish and their virtuous roots only increase. I think all of us who have generated bodhicitta understand this very well. No matter how great the difficulties we encounter, we will not lose our faith. Some time ago, our academy invited a doctor from Qinghai, whose name is Master Jamyang, I believe. He is about 78 years old. He once told me about his experience. At the age of 30, he was sent to prison and spent more than 10 years there. He lived there for over a decade. At that time, it was very difficult to seek the Dharma in the prison. He had great faith in Dzogchen, but he couldn't find the chance to receive the teachings. Later, one of our well-known lamas, Khenpo Munsel, who has now passed away, was in the same prison with others. They were in the same prison. He really wanted to receive Khenpo Acho's oral instructions on Dzogchen. Later, when he especially wanted to receive these instructions, he talked privately with Khenpo Munsel. He expressed his desire to receive this teaching, but had never got the chance because at that time, some lamas who held the lineage had already passed away. After they passed away, he wanted it even more. He was so moved that he even cried. Khenpo Munsel knew and said, "If you truly want to receive it, for now you need to recite the 100-syllable mantra. I will give you the transmission when the circumstance is proper." But in prison there were no malas, so it was difficult to count the number. He said, "I'm afraid it will be hard to keep count. What should I do?" Khenpo said, "Just keep reciting diligently, and we'll talk about the teaching after you finish." So he kept reciting continuously. During the day he had to work. He was afraid others would find out, so he recited silently for over 2 months. After more than 2 months, he was finally ready to receive the transmission. When it was time, I asked him for details, and he told me about the older practitioners in prison at that time. Truly, their lives were completely different from practitioners today. If someone could practice perfectly in such conditions, that would be truly remarkable. So I asked him for details. Then he went to see Khenpo. Because Khenpo had trouble with his leg, he didn't have to do labor every day. At that time, he was 30 years old, so he had to do labor every day. Khenpo said, if you really want to receive the Dharma, you may have trouble getting food every day. You'll have to pretend to be sick. He said, that's no problem. One morning, he just stayed in bed. When everyone else went to work, he said, I'm really sick today. I can't get up at all. They called the doctor to check him and take his temperature. When the doctor was not around, he put the thermometer in hot water, then put it under his armpit. After a while, the doctor came back and checked. He said, you have a very high fever. You must get an injection. He replied, I don't think I can get an injection. Can you just give me some medicine? The doctor gave him some medicine. After getting the medicine, he burned it all in the stove. When the doctor and everyone else were gone, he immediately went to see Khenpo. At that time, Khenpo Mansel had no books. Everything was transmitted orally. When Khenpo was young, he had studied very well and could recite all the teachings from memory and taught him everything. As he listened, he felt every word of Khenpo was especially precious, but there was no way to write it down. His memory was not very good. If only he had a pen and paper, but in prison there was nothing, no way to write anything down. He listened for 15 days straight. He could only eat a little at night. The food in prison was already poor, and what was even worse, he barely got anything to eat during the day for almost half a month. Sometimes at night, he could get a little food. That was the first time he received the teachings. The second time, several other lamas listened together with him in front of Khenpo Mansel. At that time, one lama secretly managed to find a little pen and paper. When Khenpo taught, this lama wrote very quickly and recorded everything. Later, he found a small piece of paper and copied it down. He wrote it all down on that paper. The teachings he received in prison were especially precious to him. He always considered them extremely precious. He kept them in a gao box he wore on his body. For this small piece of paper, he felt it was extremely rare. I have never seen anything like it. It was a single sheet of paper with about 42 lines on it. The writing was extremely tiny. Even with current technology, it would still be very difficult for us to write such tiny characters. At that time, the environment forced them to find this way. The writing was excellent. He wrote very well, and not a single word was missing. He still keeps it with him to this day. He said, this is the Dharma I received in prison. After 10 years in prison, later, even though he was often criticized and re-educated during those years and lived through many hardships, this little piece of paper was never damaged. I counted it up later. From the age of 30 to 78, he has always kept it with him. He said, not for a single instant have I been separated from it. This was the instruction my teacher gave me. I wonder, if we were in such circumstances, would we have such faith? Sometimes those who have generated bodhicitta are truly different from others. This is also what the sutra says, as we just learned. Now we come to the fifth quality. That is, if a person possesses bodhicitta, they are worthy of our respect and prostration. 5. Worthy of homage and refuge, I prostrate to the bodies of those in whom this jewel, the sublime attitude, is born. Even harming them will lead to happiness. I go for refuge to the wellsprings of joy. This means, no matter who the person is, we should pay homage to them if they possess the precious bodhicitta in their mind stream. Regardless of caste or status, as described earlier, whether they are a president or king in a palace, or a head of state, or someone with no possessions, or a beggar wandering the streets, as long as their mind stream contains this virtuous bodhicitta, as long as they have this kind and noble bodhicitta, if they have this kind and noble bodhicitta, then, as the author Shantideva says, their body is worthy of respect and prostration. This means whether in the present, future, or past, no matter how many people in the world have bodhicitta in their mind stream, as Shantideva himself would pay homage to them. As we can see from Buddhist history, Shantideva was truly a realized bodhisattva, and even as a realized bodhisattva, he would show respect and prostrate to such a person. According to some Hinayana views, One must have the Hinayana precepts in their mind stream, and only after meeting many conditions can they receive respect from others. But from the Mahayana perspective, as long as you have bodhicitta in your mind stream, then you are worthy of others' respect, offerings, and praise. Any kind of praise or offering is deserved. Such people are extremely rare in this world. So from now on, since we need to interact with many sentient beings and often receive offerings from others, especially for monastics, this is quite common. If there is not even a little trace of bodhicitta in our mind stream, then whether we can truly take these offerings is hard to say. As lay people, you also encounter all kinds of situations. So having bodhicitta in your mind stream is extremely important. If you have bodhicitta in your mind stream, then even Shantideva would prostrate to you. So when studying the ornament of clear realization or the Prajna Paramita Sutra, similar cases are often mentioned. For example, the place where a bodhisattva lives is worthy of prostration, even if the bodhisattva is no longer there. The place where they once lived is still worthy of respect. For example, our teacher, His Holiness, who has now passed away and is no longer here, but if someone says, this is where His Holiness once taught and benefited beings, then it is still worthy of prostration. And there are many merits and blessing in doing so. When we are outside, if we see places where His Holiness once lived, when we see them, for example, when I pass by the 303 hospital in Chengdu, I always think, this is where a great bodhisattva once lived. In my heart, I feel respect and think it is worthy of prostration. Previously, Khenpo Sodargye said when teaching the ornament of clear realization that the places where Patrul Rinpoche lived, or where Khenpo Kunpal lived, are also worthy of respect and prostration for anyone who visits. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche also said, whenever I see the place where my root guru lived, it is always worthy of prostration. Later, when we went to Sershul, the places where Patrul Rinpoche, Popa Tulku, and Mifam Rinpoche lived, there is nothing left there now. For example, the place where Patrul Rinpoche was born, now there is only a stone, nothing else, but when we go there we prostrate to the empty ground. Why? Because this is a place where a bodhisattva once lived. It is not like an ordinary person's home. It is a place where a bodhisattva lived. And these bodhisattvas are recognized by all. Just like when we make pilgrimage to the 4 holy sites in India, even though Buddha Shakyamuni is no longer there, some places are just wilderness. But we all know this is where the Buddha once lived. In the same way, the places where bodhisattvas lived are also worthy of respect and prostration. If someone truly possesses bodhicitta now, then prostrating and showing respect to them is beyond question. Therefore, in the world today, the places where great bodhisattvas are recognized to have lived, even if it's just a hotel they stayed in, are worthy of our homage. I often think this way. When passing through places like Barkam or Myaluo, as long as it's a place where His Holiness stayed, even in the car, I always feel respect, thinking in my heart, this is where a bodhisattva once lived. In fact, such mind of respect brings great merit. Therefore, if a bodhisattva truly lives somewhere in this world, that place will flourish in the Dharma. Beings will find happiness and many benefits will arise. There are many benefits for sentient beings. So sometimes I think, since there are more people listening to the Bodhicharyavatara this time, among them, can some truly give rise to bodhicitta in their mind stream? If they can give rise to bodhicitta, then I think for them, this will be the greatest achievement of their life. Nothing else compares. Having no other realization or miracle powers is totally fine. You don't need to fly in the sky or swim like a fish. None of that matters for a Buddhist. What matters most is not supernatural powers. The only thing that matters is this: to have aspirational and engaged bodhicitta, the intention to benefit others. This is what we should truly aspire to. Whoever has bodhicitta in their mind stream, even Shantideva would prostrate to them, even if sometimes we harm such a bodhisattva, whether by slandering, hitting, burning, or otherwise harming them. In fact, not only will there not be great negative consequences, but it actually creates a connection to happiness. It creates a special connection to happiness with them. So they are truly the source of all happiness. In this world, a true bodhisattva, no matter how you connect with them, whether the connection is good or bad, as long as it is with a bodhisattva, they are certainly the source of happiness for sentient beings. So Shantideva says we should take refuge in them, take refuge in such a source of happiness for all beings. We should prostrate to them, make offerings, show respect, praise, and honor them in every way. This is also explained in the Ornament of Clear Realization, where praise, service, and honor are discussed from many perspectives. When practicing the path, there is much praise for bodhisattvas, as it says in the Sutra of the Heap of Jewels. For example, when a great king has a prince with all the marks, upon the prince's birth, people from the city and small countries gather together. For example, in a country, when a prince with the marks of a king is born, when the prince is born, everyone in the country, even from small states, gathers and rejoices, saying, "The prince of our king is born. With the prince's birth, the country will not be without a successor." Everyone is filled with joy, ministers and commoners alike. All prostrate and show respect to the prince. This was the custom in the past. When bodhicitta arises in someone's mind stream, it is like the birth of a prince with all the marks. Gods and humans all honor and respect them with pure minds. When someone gives rise to bodhicitta in their mind stream, even if they appear to be an ordinary person, in reality they are like a prince with all the marks, worthy of honor and respect. Just like a newborn prince, they cannot yet do the work of a king. Likewise, we may have just given rise to bodhicitta after studying the Bodhicharyavatara for a week or so, and have only had bodhicitta for 7 or 8 days. We may not yet be able to do the work of a great bodhisattva king. But even so, humans and non-humans, including gods, can prostrate to us. No need to be afraid if others prostrate to you. You don't have to say, don't prostrate, don't prostrate. In the past, when people prostrated to Tulkutishta, he would get very nervous. He would say, don't prostrate, don't prostrate, bring me a scripture. By the time the scripture was brought, everyone had already finished prostrating. This happened often, but if you have bodhicitta in your mind stream, there's no need to hold a scripture. Of course, Tulkutishta was extremely humble and truly remarkable. Even at the academy, when giving empowerments to thousands, he was still very humble. Whenever someone prostrated or showed respect, he would get nervous. He was a truly great master, but always very humble. And he was always very nervous about it. Whenever a monastic prostrated to him, he would immediately get up and grab a scripture. He did this all the time. So, if you truly have bodhicitta in your mind stream, it is fine for others to prostrate to you. Here it says, even gods, humans, and all beings can prostrate to someone with such pure respect. As it is also said in the introduction to the Middle Way, the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas actually arise from the Buddha arises from the Bodhisattva, and the Bodhisattva arises from Bodhicitta. The source of bodhicitta is great compassion. So Chandrakirti said, I do not first prostrate to anyone else, but now I prostrate to great compassion. Many stories about this are told in its commentary. Why do we show such respect to those with bodhicitta? Because they are truly the heirs of the Tathagata. Just as many countries place their hopes for the future on university students and top scholars, they believe those with potential should be cared for in every way. In the same way, in Buddhism, all future aspirations for benefiting beings are connected to bodhisattvas. Therefore, whenever bodhicitta arises in your mind stream, even Shantideva would prostrate, and anyone else's prostration is also appropriate. Whenever anyone gives rise to the precious bodhicitta, the author prostrates to their body. Even if someone harms them, it will connect the one who harms them to happiness. We often say this as well. If you form a positive connection with someone who has bodhicitta, you will attain accomplishment in this very life. If you form a negative connection, you cut the root of samsara, you cut the seed of samsara. What does this mean? If you form a positive connection, there is nothing more to say. If he is a bodhisattva, you will definitely attain accomplishment. If you do not form a positive connection, for example, if you criticize or harm them, you may experience some negative result temporarily. As mentioned earlier, the result will be as many eons as the number of negative thoughts. But because of their motivation and compassion, you will quickly attain Buddhahood. So when you encounter a bodhisattva, making offerings and showing respect brings great merit. Even if you do not, and instead give rise to anger or slander, or have never met them at all, comparing these two, it is still better to have anger or slander toward them. Why? If you never meet them, you will remain in samsara and may never attain liberation. But if you meet them and even harm them, even if you experience some negative result temporarily, you will quickly attain accomplishment in the end. So there is a difference here. Therefore, in front of the Bodhisattva, the source of all beings' happiness, we sincerely take refuge. If someone asks, isn't this teaching contradictory to malice toward the offspring of the victors? The Buddha said they will fall into hell for as many eons as the number of their bad thoughts. The answer, no, it is not contradictory. The previous verse explains the result of negative thoughts. If you give rise to a single negative thought, the fault is immense. But now even forming a negative connection with them becomes a good one. So are these two statements contradictory? They are not. The previous verse mainly explains that giving rise to negative thoughts brings very serious results. This is explained from the perspective of the ripened effect of karma. Of course, if you confess and give rise to pure faith, the result will quickly disappear and you won't suffer for so long. Here it means that the Bodhisattva, both temporarily and ultimately, accepts and benefits even those who harm them. So even forming a negative connection with them becomes a good one. Just as King Maitripala temporarily and ultimately brought happiness to the 5 Rakshasas, they can be called Yakshas or Rakshasas. Different stories use different terms. He enabled them to attain happiness. At that time, in front of King Maitripala, 5 Yakshas began to drink his blood. Because he was a great Bodhisattva, these Rakshasas only fell into the lower realms temporarily. Later, King Maitripala, or Buddha Shakyamuni, made the aspiration that temporarily he would give them happiness with his blood. And ultimately, with the nectar of the Dharma, he would bring them liberation. Later, when Buddha Shakyamuni attained enlightenment, these 5 yakshas became the first 5 bhikshus to whom he turned the wheel of Dharma. After the turning of the Dharma wheel, they all attained arhatship. So if these 5 yakshas had never met King Maitripala, Buddha Shakyamuni, they would never have the chance to attain liberation when Buddha Shakyamuni turned the wheel of Dharma. So initially harming him actually created a connection to happiness. Later, Tokme Zangpo wrote a verse, unable to see the sun-like jewel of Bodhicitta, which completely dispels the darkness of the 2 obscurations, many people in the world cannot see. What can't they see? The sun-like jewel of precious Bodhicitta, Bodhicitta is like the sun, can dispel the darkness of afflictive and cognitive obscurations. Just like someone who has no eyes, they cannot see the sun. In the same way, many people in the world today cannot see the sun of Bodhicitta that dispels the 2 obscurations. They fall into the darkness of ignorance, keeping their eyes wide open to eternalism and nihilism. How truly pitiable. They always remain in the darkness of ignorance. They do not open the eyes that should be opened. Instead, their eyes of eternalism and nihilism are always wide open. All day long they are busy with worldly matters. Some fall into nihilism, some into wrong views. These beings are truly pitiable. They don't study what they should and study what they shouldn't. So these individuals are truly pitiable. End of the commentary on chapter 1. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Bandara Badma Sadar